Lexi.
Yes.
I love this book.
Thank
This
you.
book is so funny and searing.
Searing.
Do you like searing? Yeah.
I love searing.
You love searing?
All authors like searing.
Yeah, you want a searing novel. It gets into the shit. It makes fun of a little bit of everything. It reveals something about yourself. I mean, it revealed nothing about me. I don't see myself in any kind of literature. But I love this book. I think this book starts, it follows somebody who gets canceled.
Yes.
And then one of her first moves is she finds the writings of Ayn Rand.
Yes.
And you describe her initial thoughts about Ayn Rand as the character says, Anna, the main character says, I had always considered her the gateway drug for bad husbands to quit their jobs and start online stock trading.
Yeah.
So,
True.
What is compelling about Ayn Rand for you in starting a novel like this?
I mean, to me, she was, you know, basically the worst person I could write a book about, which really appealed to me. She's so contentious within the culture, and but I had recently watched a documentary about her when I started thinking about this, and to be honest, I mean, her ideas are provocative and difficult, but she also just had like a crazy sex life, which I found, you know, she was essentially in an open relationship at the end of her, you know, in her 60s. She was having an affair with like a man 25 years younger than her. So like Ayn Rand was basically a polyamorous. Like she had a polycule, which I think people sort of like don't know about her, and it kind of destroyed her in the end. She ended up sort of like having a nervous breakdown when he was cheating on her. It kind of undermined her whole philosophy of selfishness in a way.
Yeah.
And I found that incredibly interesting and funny. She's just funny.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
funny.
If there's one thing that's going to take Ayn Rand down, who thought it was going to be polyamory?
It was polyamory. It was polyamory that did it in the end, which I just find delicious.
I think it's I think your book sort of looks at what it means to be selfish. It sort of examines narcissism. Like, what to you is interesting about the idea of narcissism? And if you can, make it about me.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, you know, I'm not the first person to say this, but the culture is pretty narcissistic, and so, you know, wanting to write a satire about the culture, you know, you want to write something that's going to speak to all sides. And I kind of felt like, you know, narcissism is also something that speaks to the nature of the artist, which this book is about, someone who's grappling with this idea of selfishness and wanting to be the best and wanting to be interesting and special and have, you know, contrarian opinions. But then there's also this desire to be empathetic and to do good in the world, and it's the kind of the conflict between selfishness and altruism that is Ayn Rand's whole philosophy, that I feel is kind of distilled in the artistic temperament, in the artist's personality, that feels like this really interesting kind of paradox to me. And narcissism plays into that really beautifully and is also funny.
It starts to unpack this idea of cancel culture. Like, how do you see that? Is there an upside to cancel culture?
Cancel culture? I mean, yes, sure. There's, you know, things. It moves the needle. There's cultural change in a way that can be good, and then there's also just, you know, I had a conversation about this with a cancelled person, and the conversation went in the sort of direction of, you know, what being cancelled kind of affords you the opportunity to do is to kind of kill your ego and not give a shit anymore about like what people think, and because the ego is all about reputation and trying to succeed, and when that's not a possibility for you anymore, then you get to pursue enlightenment, which I think is the other thing we could all be doing with our lives if we wanted to.
So are you saying in order for me to get enlightened, I have to first get canceled? Is that what I need to do tonight?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna hold off. I want to hold on to that ego just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think enlightenment is good for, you know, as you get older, and you know, we are all supposed to be sort of shedding our egos and not caring about these things that preoccupy us in our youth. So I feel like getting enlightened is something you could put off for retirement, you know, retirement/enlightenment, and that seems like a good thing.
Yeah. Working at Walmart, go work at Enlightenment, right?
Yes,
That's the time. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, this is a satire. I think it's I think it's fascinating how you're so specific in this book, and you're able to satirize the left and the right as you move this character through these spaces. I guess I'm curious. I always view satire, and The Daily Show, we dabble in it here and there. But more often than me, it seems like satire is a broadsword. It's rarely scalpel.
Yeah.
It seems as if you find complexity in it. How do you find complexity in satire?
I think you just have to be really specific. You have to be really generous. Like, the reader is smart. You can't try to trick them with easy kind of ideas and jokes.
Well, you can. I mean, sometimes it can be very rewarding.
Yes, and a lot of people will fall for it. But if you want to if you want the reader to really come on side with you, and especially with your most transgressive material, then you've got to really not take them for granted. And I edit the crap out of my books. I go in there, I try to see it from all different sides, and I really try to get as specific as possible, you know, so that the reader feels like I respect their intelligence, and I'm thinking of the thing they might argue back with me about. And I get specific, you know, there's a scene in the book, a sex scene, where the character is pretending to do the locker room scene from Jerry Maguire. Do you remember that bit? Yeah. So, you know, I watched that scene a lot, and I really got very specific about how you might perform certain sexual acts while doing the Jerry Maguire locker scene. So, you know, you do it, you commit, and you really go all the way with it.
If obsessing and thinking about sex scenes from movies could make you a great author, I think I would be a great author. I'm curious what you say about the editing, though. That's all it is, right? I'm curious when you talk about editing, too. Like, are you having a conversation with yourself as you're writing that with, like, more extreme points of view than you don't know if you fully believe, and you're writing that thing out, and then your editing process is a chance to essentially see if it holds water?
Exactly, that's it. I'm always, in a sense, trying to cancel myself as I'm writing. I'm thinking of, like, what would someone who thinks the opposite of this say, and then what would the counter argument be, and, like, how would I destroy myself if I wanted to? That's how I write. I'm just constantly thinking of these other arguments, and in a sense, it just makes your writing better and better, and in a weird, corny way, it makes you better, because the more you think about what the other side might think and try to make your argument better, you know, the smarter and the more kind of compassionate you become. And I think that's why I get away with saying some of the things I say in the book, because it's done with, you know, I'm not. I think I'm respecting these characters and their complexity and their wholeness, and understanding why they think what they think, and looking for the funny parts, really. Yeah. And the absurd parts, which, you know.
Who do you imagine your audience is when you're writing?
Oh, God. I mean, I think it's just like this mean voice in my own head.
You're trying to quiet down the mean voices in your head?
It's literally just me being as mean as I can to myself. I don't know, there's probably a few. I think there's a couple of critics I think about a little bit. Ones I respect and ones I don't. They're in my head. Some of my friends who are writers that are kind of in my head. But yeah, and yes, definitely, like, these people I imagine holding really different opinions to me. I feel like there's like an avatar of that person that's sort of there saying, but what about, you know, this, and why aren't you thinking about this? And I'm like, okay, and then, you know, you go back in. So I don't know. There's a whole parliament of people in there telling me that I'm getting it wrong.
Well, I'm glad. Well, I would say I think you got it right. I find this book hilarious, fantastic. Congratulations. I hope at least one of those voices in your head is happy with the product. The Book of Ayn is available now. Lexi Freiman.